Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing a book review on The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein by Kiersten White. The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein by Kiersten White is a retelling of Mary Shelley's classic Frankenstein, told through the point of view of Elizabeth Frankenstein. Before she becomes a Frankenstein, she starts as Elizabeth Lavenza, a little girl abused by her caregiver until she is taken into the custody of the wealthy Frankenstein family. She meets young Victor Frankenstein, an odd, solitary boy, and the two become inseparable. As the years pass, Elizabeth learns to manage Victor's changes in temper, and indulges his every whim, no matter how depraved. Elizabeth has to navigate Victor's madness before he turns her into one of his scientific experiments. You guys, I actually ended up rather enjoying this retelling of Mary Shelley's classic Frankenstein. I was very pleasantly surprised how much I ended up enjoying this. Like I usually do with any given young adult retelling of something, because I am just such a hardcore, person who loves the classics. Whenever a young adult author, retells something like this, I'm usually very hesitant. I'm a little concerned. I'm a little wary. But surprisingly, I really feel like Kiersten White, she did a remarkable job really including those huge, big, pivotal themes and messages that are presented in Mary Shelley's original story. Because, the original story of Frankenstein, a lot of issues about life and death and science and religion and someone trying to be a god, essentially. Someone's ego and obsession leading them to act like they are a god and whatnot. And I really do believe Kiersten White tackled all those themes and issues that Mary Shelley does, and she did so in a really brilliant way. I think that really truly made this book enjoyable at the end of the day, and not just, fluff. not just young adult fluff. And I really do think this book is a great way to get a young reader into Frankenstein, because the one drawback with Frankenstein, you guys, the original story, the one drawback with the original story is that it can read pretty heavy. It can read pretty heavy and dense, and there's some chapters that can be a little hard and rough to get through, just because of how the language of that time was, and as modern readers, it can be a little difficult to get through Frankenstein at times. So yeah, Kiersten White, she takes, what we already love about Frankenstein, and she modernizes things kind of just enough to get you, the modern reader, really drawn in and engaged, and that things don't read heavy or dense, you know what I mean? Things they run a little bit smoother, that it's a little bit more clear and concise, I suppose, that you can kind of handle in one go. Because, yeah, seriously, if you've read the original like I have, some of those passages between, Victor Frankenstein and his creature, some of those passages between the two of them, they are very, very philosophical. They are very heavy with the philosophical debate, and sometimes you gotta really read it a couple different times to really truly understand kind of what's going on, what's being said between Frankenstein and his creature. And yeah, Kiersten White, I mean, she will still have some of she retains a lot of that philosophical debate and even some of that old-fashioned language, but like I mentioned, she does so in such a way that's not really heavy or dense. It's much more easy to kind of slide right on in there and understand the language, I suppose. And I think my number one concern heading into this novel, I was really concerned that Kiersten White would turn Elizabeth into like a badass fighter. And what I mean by that, I was kind of concerned that she would, give Elizabeth, like weapons, she would carry a sword, and she would kill people, and she'd be an excellent, amazing fighter, just out of nowhere, I was really concerned that Elizabeth would be a badass lady warrior of the time period, which would be rather kind of ridiculous and make no sense. It's the 1800s, you guys. But no, Kiersten White doesn't do that, which I was really thankful for, me personally, because Elizabeth, she's a badass in her own way without resorting to weaponry and fighting skills, you know what I mean? Elizabeth is a badass in her own way with how she goes against the system, you know? She is a woman, she's a young woman in the 1800s. Her place in society is told to her by a man where she's meant to go with her life, how she's supposed to conduct her life, what she's supposed to wear, how she's supposed to talk. It's all conducted by men. And she's able to navigate herself in this world knowing where her place is and navigating and using her own natural manipulation, you know, and what she is capable of, and she uses her feminism to get to places and to manipulate the men around her. So she uses her own natural abilities, you know. She doesn't resort to all of a sudden being a badass using a sword and that she can all of a sudden fight, you know. So I appreciated that. I liked that Elizabeth, she was a badass in her own way by using her own natural skills and abilities as a woman, using her feminine charms, if you will. And the one thing that she knows, the one thing that Elizabeth understands about her place as a woman in this society, is that she knows that she is required to eventually marry. So she sets her target on Victor Frankenstein. As soon as she is kind of brought into the family, she immediately realizes she needs to get in the good graces of Victor Frankenstein. She needs to essentially kind of seduce him in her own way and to secure her place as a future Frankenstein, essentially. Because if she doesn't secure her place as a Frankenstein, she will go back to the poverty she came from, and she likes not being in poverty. She likes the wealth and status that she has and what the wealth and status of being a Frankenstein could give her. So I was very pleasantly surprised with the maturity of this novel, I think, and the places that it went. And I absolutely love the character of Elizabeth Lavenza as she is initially before she's a Frankenstein. I loved her as a character. She's definitely not your perfect heroine. She's definitely pretty complex and flawed. And she's always kind of constantly questioning that side of herself, because she manipulates a lot. She does a lot of manipulation throughout this book in order to secure her future, essentially, which she has to do, or else she's going right on back to poverty. And yeah, sometimes she can be rather unlikable. There's moments that you're kind of like, oh girl, what are you doing? Don't do that. It's just a mess. You're going to wind up in a mess down the future. So there's times that you don't like her, sometimes that you don't fully understand what she's doing. And yes, sometimes she can come across as a bit cruel. She can come across as a bit cruel towards the people that are closest to her, but I really like that about her character, that she wasn't, you know, some perfect lady of the Victorian era that she's supposed to be. Because what this book is about at the end of the day, it is really Elizabeth, her journey from kind of being a young, naive girl to growing into a mature woman, and kind of understanding the choices and the consequences that get her to where she is by the end of this book. And yeah, I mean, her one obsessive desire in this book is to be a Frankenstein, no matter the cost. And yeah, there are many things that come back to bite her in the ass by the end of this book. And yeah, that's where her doubts and concerns kind of develop from there, you know, and she starts questioning, have I done the right thing? Have I hurt the wrong people? All in the name of trying to become a Frankenstein. So yeah, this book is about her obsession to be a Frankenstein. It drives every single thing that she does in this book. And I do need to talk about this cover, because I feel like this cover is absolute genius, really displaying that theme of her obsession. Because, see, here's the cover. You know, you have the dark descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein. Notice that Frankenstein down here. It looks stitched, because I think this is supposed to be skin. I think this is supposed to be like kind of skin. And this is the name Frankenstein being stitched on top. And remember, she is not initially a Frankenstein. She is originally Elizabeth Lavenza, and she is a Lavenza for the good majority of this book, before she is even a Frankenstein, you guys. She doesn't even become a Frankenstein until literally more near the end of this book. So, the way I like to see this cover, and where the genius lies with the cover, is that you can almost read that this book was originally supposed to say The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Lavenza. Imagine that Lavenza is here. You know, imagine that Lavenza is here, but the Frankenstein gets stitched right on top of Lavenza, right on top of who she was. And I just feel like this really, you know, calls out to that theme, you know, of her obsession and, you know, the consequences and things that happen to her at the end of the day. And it's all just a big thing with her character, because she's truly not very happy. She's not a very happy character in this book, because she is so obsessed, she is so determined to become a Frankenstein, and she risks her own happiness. You know, she risks her own happiness all for Victor, in a sense. She does everything for him to make him happy rather than make herself happy. So, over the course of this novel, she starts to unravel the true Victor Frankenstein, the monster that he really is deep down. And yeah, the name of Frankenstein eventually becomes this corruption, and it's evil, and it's horrible, and yeah, once again, just the genius of this cover, you know, the corruption of the name and how evil the name is at the end of the day, and yeah, this evilness being overridden on top of her. And yeah, guys, there is a bit of a love triangle in this book, but not a love triangle in like a traditional sense. There is a slight love triangle with Elizabeth and Victor and their friend Henry Clerval, but Henry he's mostly talked about through flashback more than anything, but there is this dynamic there that Elizabeth, if things go south with Victor, she has Henry as a backup, essentially. And poor Henry, poor Henry, because because of her manipulations and her wanting to, you know, make sure she has everything for the future, she can be a little cruel towards Henry on occasion. And yeah, it's like, girl, Henry is the man you should have been going after, because he's a good guy. You shouldn't have been going after Victor Frankenstein. So yeah, there is a bit of a triangle, but not in the traditional sense, because she's not really going after both guys. Both guys are going after her, really. Overall, I was really impressed with this book, this retelling of Frankenstein. I really enjoyed it. I was surprised with the level of maturity, and I really appreciated that Kiersten White, you know, she tackled those heavy themes and messages, but did so in such a way that we as a modern reader can really tackle it and grasp it. I don't think this book was anywhere near perfect. It's not a very big book, you guys. If you can see how small it is, it's not a very big book, and a lot is happening in it for such a small book. So I do feel like there were some moments that were rushed a little bit. Like, we needed to get from point A to point B to point C, and we kind of got to rush a little bit in some of those areas in the middle. So yeah, some parts were a little bit rushed, unfortunately. But overall, I love this book. It was a very quick read, in my opinion. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I definitely recommend it if you are a fan of the original story. I think you might be pleasantly surprised with this. And yeah, for those of you who have always maybe wanted to read Frankenstein, but you're not quite sure if you can get through it, maybe try tackling something like this that might give you the courage to go into the original. So you guys, that's it for my review of The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein. In the comments below, have you guys read this book? Do you plan on reading it? Just let me know your thoughts down below. And yeah, how do you feel about Frankenstein retellings? Are there any other retellings of Frankenstein that I should go check out? Just let me know and I'll go rush out and get them, because I do love a good retelling of Frankenstein, you guys. So that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye guys.